How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be going over all the stuff you should know if you're looking to buy an E39 or already own an E39. This is my 2000 528 Touring with a factory manual, and I've had it for about 7 months now. It used to be my dad's car. He got it at about 30,000 miles, and I just hit 204,000. The first thing I'll go over is water leaks into the car. I've been chasing a few of them, and I think I'm good now, but it took a long time. The first leak I had would drip onto the carpet right over here, and it took me probably about 4 months to find it. I always thought it was a sunroof drain, so I'd pulled the headliner out, pulled the A-pillar off, took all that stuff apart, and everything seemed fine. It was draining fine, but it turned out that the glue that's used to hold the windshield down actually had a hole in it here and a hole in it here. So it doesn't look great, but I put RTV underneath this from the top to the bottom, and I haven't gotten water in the car from there yet. But I've heard a lot of cars have issues with the hose that connects to the drain for the sunroof popping off, because there's no actual clip that holds it on, it's just slid on. And I've heard that it can pop off, and then all the water that drips into the sunroof will go down the A-pillar and out the glove box like mine was doing. That's why I thought it was the sunroof drain. The other leaks you might come across is the weather seal inside the door will go bad and water will leak out of the light into the carpet. So that's another way you can get water pooling up inside the car, is the weather seal. That's a pretty easy fix. You just have to take the door card off and go under there and run some glue along the weather seal and stick it back on, put everything together and let it dry. And I had to do that for that door, but after that it was good. The next leak I had on the car, which is touring specific, was water leaking out of the rear tail light, the third brake light. It would drip out of these screw holes right onto here, or if this was up, whatever was underneath, that would get soaked. And I chased that for a while and couldn't figure out what it was. And it turns out it was actually the gasket for the rear window sprayer went bad, dry rotted, and all the water that would go down here would flow into that and then fill up the tail light and drip into the car. So mine's actually dead from the water, so I have to find where to get another one of those. The last leak I had actually killed the amp in the car, so I bought one of those out of a junkyard and it worked. But I have this here just in case, but I'm pretty sure I figured this one out. The amp would fill with water and all the wiring here would get soaked. And it would cause, never seen that before. And it would cause a static out of the tweeters in the car when the car was shut off. From what I found, it was the gasket around the antenna. Funny, all the old gaskets on the car dry rot. But it would leak from here, under the roof, onto the headliner, down the D-pillar, and straight into my amp, which burned out the first one, and I think was causing a parasitic draw. The car wouldn't be able to be parked for any longer than 5 or 6 days and the battery would die, but now I've left it for a few weeks and it was perfectly fine. My car has the factory manual, so I can't say much about how the automatics are, but from what I've heard, they're not bad. The next thing I'll talk about is the cooling system. I have a leak right now. I need to pressure test it to see where it's actually coming from. That's why I have some spare water there. It holds it perfectly. But the cooling system will probably need a refresh. The expansion tanks over time will crack, start to leak. This hose actually got a bubble in it, so I replaced that recently. That was easy and only like 20 bucks. But you can see I have a brass bleed screw right there. That's because the factory one popped off while I was driving and sprayed all the coolant out of the car. So probably a good thing to make those metal so that doesn't actually happen. Luckily I was in my apartment complex when it happened, so I didn't get stranded. But right there, there's also another one here. Those ones I think aren't as bad because they don't get as hot, but that one I would definitely recommend replacing. The next thing which I have to do to the car is power steering reservoir and hoses. They're leaking a little bit. It's not bad. The level stays where it should, but every once in a while I have a drop. But the reservoir is cheap and easy to replace. The hoses are easy, so that's some more preventive maintenance just to do to the car. A big thing that I have to do is the oil filter housing. They have a gasket that starts to leak, but mine isn't leaking. That's not why I would replace it. I will actually walk up and show you guys right now why I'm replacing it. There's a little valve in it that keeps oil from draining back into the engine so that the oil filter housing stays full. But that valve goes bad, drains all the oil back in, and you starve your engine of oil for about 5 seconds when you start the car, because it has to fill up the reservoir and then you get oil pressure. So I have a new filter housing that has a new valve, which I'll be putting in, so I don't have that issue anymore. I was in the middle of editing and remembered I forgot to show you guys what valve I was talking about. But it's right here. This valve keeps oil from draining out of the oil filter housing when the car's shut off. So this will start leaking or break or be completely missing and won't be able to hold the oil in the filter anymore. The next thing you should definitely look for is to make sure the auxiliary fan is working. I never had an overheating issue without it working, even in Florida, but I've heard that without that working, the clutch fan just isn't enough for it. But the factory one had been broken for a long time, so I bought one online, replaced it. It's not an easy job, but, well, it's easy, just time consuming. But after I replaced that, the AC was a lot better, and it actually, I believe, fixed a stalling issue. The car every 3 days would stall when I pushed the clutch in, and after I replaced that, it was fine. The sun's almost down, so I don't have much more time left, but I will go over the rust spots. Here's one, the gas cap. Mine's got a little bit of it, but it's still fixable. Definitely check in here, because I've seen ones that are completely rotted out and there's nothing left. The next spot where I actually have some is the fender right here. It's not too bad, again, enough I can fix it, but look up here, feel around the bottom of it, make sure there's no big rust holes. The other leak I have on this car is the oil pan gasket, which can't really blame it. I have 205,000 miles on the car, but eventually I'll do that, do an engine reseal, and should be the last thing the car really needs. If you stayed until the end of the video, thank you. Hopefully this helped if you're going to look at an E39 or you already own an E39. If you guys know anything about these cars that you want to let me know in the comments that I should look for, let me know, and I will see you in the next one.